everybody and welcome to the August instalment of the 2022 Mystery Blanket Club. We are about to begin work on Mailout 6, which means we're just over halfway through this year's project. Now, last week in the UK, we had a heat wave with very high temperatures, which are really quite unusual for the UK. It reached almost 40 degrees here in Nottingham, and my upstairs workroom was absolutely baking hot, so hot that I actually found it impossible to knit. I never thought I'd say that. I've knitted in all sorts of temperatures, hot and cold, but it was just too hot to knit. Thankfully this week the weather has cooled down a lot, so hopefully for all my UK members it's much more comfortable now for you to knit and you can crack on with your August squares. I have 5 squares for you to knit this month, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on in this introduction. But first of all, let's talk about the main focus of this month's mail out, and that is seams. Not everybody's favourite, I know, but there is plenty of help in the blog this month to help you sew your squares together. Now, after completing the August squares, you will have 2 strips completed. If you've knitted your squares separately, however, you will need to sew those squares together before you can sew strips 1 and 2 together. So to help you with this, in this month's blog, there are 3 technical videos. The first one shows you how to do horizontal mattress stitch. So this would be useful for sewing individual squares together if you haven't worked in strips. I also demonstrate vertical mattress stitch. So if you have knitted in strips, you can then jump to vertical mattress stitch, which is used to sew the strips together. So those 3 videos are in this month's blog to help you start piecing your blanket together. It's exciting now, isn't it? Because we're getting to the point where strips are being completed and the whole blanket is really starting to come to life. And over the next 4 months after this month, you will knit the remaining squares, and very soon you will have your very own mystery blanket. One question though, have you guessed the theme yet? I know that quite a few of you have actually guessed it correctly now, but there are some of you still out there trying to work out what it is. So do send in your answers to sue@debbieabrahams.com and we will let you know if you are correct. In your August mail out, you will see that there is a new chart that has been added to the mail out. It's on page 5 and it's called the Chart for Stitch and Row Reference. Okay, now what this is, it's a chart that tells you the number of stitches and rows in each of the squares that you've completed so far, and this will help you to sew your squares together. You will need to use this information, have this at hand when you sew your strips together. Also, obviously the technical videos I've just spoken about will be a great help in terms of technique. And also in the written blog, do read the written blog this month. It's got some really important information to help you sew your strips together. I give you much more detailed information in the written blog about how to ease the squares together when the rows are different from one square to the other that are next door to each other. So do make sure you have a good read of that before you start sewing anything together at all. There's lots and lots of help this month, lots of help with seams to help you through that process. So the squares to knit this month then are all squares that will be familiar to you because they are repeats or variations of what you have knitted previously. We begin with square number 11, Lalique 2. So this is the lacy square using the silver ghost and gold pearl with a little bit of mint, vintage pink and baby silver in there too, in some garter stitch stripes. But notice that in comparison to its sister square, which is square 39, the bands of Silver Ghost and Gold Pearl have been reversed. So you're going to begin with Silver Ghost, and then the bands of lace stitch go Silver Ghost, Gold Pearl, so Silver Ghost, Gold Pearl, ending with Silver Ghost. Okay, the actual lace pattern is identical though to square 39. Next you are knitting Dapper, which is squares 12 and 13. Now this is identical to squares 37 and 38 that you had in a previous mail out. There are two options for these squares, and I would suggest, as it says on, let's have a look, as it says on page 10 of your mail out, you need to choose the same option that you knitted for squares 37 and 38. This will help keep the blanket balanced in terms of design. So if you knitted option 1 for 37 and 38, you should really knit option 1 for 12 and 13 too. The next square is Suave 2, and this is very similar to square 36, but if you look very carefully at Suave 2, which is square 14, the cables are twisting in the opposite direction. So it's that cable pattern that's got those stitches that are worked through the backs of the loops on the edges of the cable. They're beaded one side and worked through the backs of the loops on the other side of the cable, which just crisps up the edges of the cables, but they're twisting in the opposite direction. So there's just a subtle change to that square, but the rest of that square is the same as 36. The final square for this month is Cartier square 46, and this is the same as square 4. If you look at the piecing diagram, you can see where the symmetry is happening in the design, and indeed Cartier is square 46 is opposite square 4 when you look at that piecing diagram. So that's just balancing out each side of the blanket there. So it's just a couple of things I need to tell you about square 46. First of all, row 59, and this is option 1, so not option 2, we're talking about option 1, square 46. Row 59 should be a decrease row, and you need to decrease the number of stitches to get down to 47 stitches, which will then enable you to do your 3 needle cast off when you join square 46 to square 47. So the row should read as knit 8, knit 2 together, and then in brackets knit 14, knit 2 together twice, and then knit 8, and this will give you 47 stitches. You must do that row instead of the row which has been written in the mail out, which is, if I just quickly have a look, it just says to knit, so you need to be doing that decrease row. That's for option 1. Option 2 is absolutely fine as it is. In the pattern notes and tips for square 46 option 1, it says that you should carry chaise long and pickles up the side of the work. Now this is only possible if on rows, let me just check, on chart rows 1 and 14 on both charts, so charts 1 and 2, chart rows 1 and 14, if you carry chaise long across the back of rows 1 and 14, so in other words you weave that yarn across those rows, and the same with the second chart, if you weave pickles across the back of the rows of 1 and 14, then you will be able to take those yarns up the side of the work. If you don't carry across the yarns on those rows, then you will have to cut them off and rejoin them. I will also put that in the written blog just to clarify for anybody that's not quite sure after my explanation of what you're supposed to do there. I will clarify that in the written blog. And just one more thing to mention about square 46 and also about square 4, its sister square. In the written blog you will see an image of the square with buttons sewn onto it, which is an optional extra that you can decide to do if you so wish. In last month's blog I spoke a little bit about these buttons and said that if you had opted for option 1 for all of the optional squares, then you would have enough buttons to sew them onto squares for 46, and then they'll also be sewn on to 22 and 23 and 27 and 28, although you haven't got those squares yet. They're coming later on. Again, if you need any clarification of that, just take a look at the July blog, the written blog, where I talk about that. So that's a little extra if you want to add some more buttons to your blanket. So there's something very exciting happening next month. On the 26th of August, we will be launching our applications for my brand new 2023 Mystery Blanket Club. And we will have a very special early bird offer for anybody that signs up within the first month. So if you sign up between the 26th of August and the 30th of September, you will be entitled to the early bird offer. I'm not going to talk too much about that now, but I've got some super exciting news to tell you very soon about the yarns in the project. We will be sending out a mail shot to everybody by email about next year's club with more information about what is going to be included, without of course giving away too much. It's a mystery after all, so I have to keep a lot of it under wraps, but I'll be telling you about the yarns that are being used and about the colour palette. So do keep an eye on your inbox for that information. We're going to have 500 memberships for next year, so I really do hope that you decide to join me again. It will be a lot of fun to have you on board again in 2023. So I'm going to leave you now to get on with your squares after, of course, reading the rest of the blog. I wish you a fantastic month. I wish you many happy hours of knitting, and I look forward to seeing you back here again at the beginning of September for instalment number 7.